All right, so Pastor Floring's sermon this Sunday, The Roles of Jesus, Intervenor. Wow. It really, it got me thinking afterward.
Yeah, me too. That Genesis 16 story it's a lot.
It is. And I kept coming back to this idea, how does God stepping into that story, like thousands of years ago, how does that actually connect with us right now?
Mm.
Especially when we're facing, I don't know, tough decisions
Yeah.
or just feeling totally overwhelmed by choices. It feels like sometimes we're kind of looking for our own intervention.
That's exactly it. And I think that's the core of what we should dig into today, right?
Yeah.
Like the mission here isn't just to rehash the sermon, but to really unpack how Jesus, acting as this intervenor, offers us something practical. Like a new path.
The new path, yeah.
And also, what does it really mean to be an apprentice
Yeah.
of Jesus? Like in our actual lives, day to day, not just hearing about it.
Right, not just Sunday morning.
Exactly. This
That-
isn't just, ancient history. It's supposed to be about you right now and the stuff you're navigating.
Okay, so let's jump into that story then. Genesis 16. It's pretty intense. You've got Sarai, Abram, and Hagar.
Yeah.
And Sarai can't have children, which back then was, well, a huge issue for carrying on the family line.
Right. Culturally massive.
So she comes up with this plan, this solution, that Abram should have a child with her Egyptian slave, Hagar.
Which is apparently an acceptable practice then, but why?
Totally. And Hagar gets pregnant. And, immediately things go sideways. Hagar starts looking down on Sarai.
Tower dynamics shifted.
Big time. And Sarai reacts pretty brutally, mistreats Hagar so badly that Hagar just runs, flees into the desert. You can just feel the desperation there.
It's so raw, isn't it? And the key thing Pastor Florin pointed out, the really profound part, is who finds her.
The angel of the Lord.
Right. And the sermon was clear. This isn't just an angel, like a messenger. The interpretation offered was that this is Jesus himself, pre-incarnate,
And Hagar gets it. She calls him the God who sees me.
Exactly. It's not symbolic for her. She recognizes him, which tells you so much about Jesus, right? He's active, personal. He gets involved. He's not just watching from afar.
He steps right into the mess.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he approaches her, I found that really striking. Pastor Florin highlighted this too. He doesn't yell at her for running away, which honestly, I might have expected.
Totally, me too.
Instead, he asks questions. Or if you come from and where are you going? It's about relationship
It
direction.
makes you pause, doesn't it? Like maybe God's first response isn't always judgment, but gentle redirection, a question.
Yeah. And then the message he gives her, it's complicated. Bittersweet is a good word.
Right. Go back to Sarai, which sounds awful, frankly.
Incredibly hard. But then there's this huge promise. Descendants, so many she can't count them, and a son, Ishmael.
Whose name means God hears. Or specifically, God has heard your misery.
Wow. That detail. God hears your misery. He's aware of the deepest, most painful parts of our lives. He sees, he hears, even when we feel completely alone.
Yeah. And it challenges that modern idea that God's intervention should always make things easy, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the path he calls us to is harder, but it's purposeful.
And Hagar does it. She obeys. She goes back. That's huge.
It really is.
So the takeaway there, connecting it outwards, is it that God's interventions are about offering maybe a better alternative, even if it looks harder from our perspective?
I think so. It's an alternative to the path we chose, running away in this case. And for Hagar, obeying led to this unexpected calling, this whole new trajectory. Success wasn't comfort. It was alignment, obedience.
Okay, that connects to the next big point from the sermon about acceptable practices.
Yeah, the cultural norms piece.
Right. Pastor Florin was really clear. This story isn't telling us to copy ancient culture. It's not endorsing having kids with slaves or polyamory or anything like that.
Definitely not. God doesn't necessarily correct every cultural thing right there in the text, but his interventions, like with Hagar, they always serve his bigger plan, his mission of redemption.
That's such an important distinction because, it brings up a really tough question, especially for maybe younger people listening, dealing with difficult family stuff or even bad relationship dynamics.
Yeah.
Is the message here that if you follow Jesus, you have to go back into hard or maybe even abusive situations? Because that could sound really dangerous.
That's a critical clarification.
Yeah.
And the sermon was careful here. Jesus didn't criticize Hagar for leaving.
Yeah.
He didn't say, how dare you run away from abuse?
Okay, good.
The point wasn't stay in abuse no matter what. It was more that Hagar's obedience, her specific situation, opened up this possibility for Jesus to call her back for a specific purpose.
A specific calling.
Yes, and Pastor Florin cautioned against reading a happily ever after
Mm.
into it. Going back was likely still incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So the message isn't a blanket rule. If you're in danger, you get help, you prioritize safety. Always. This story is about discerning a very specific, maybe rare divine call within God's bigger picture.
That nuance is super helpful. And it links right into what feels really relevant today, especially with, pressure to conform or wanting quick fixes.
Yeah, the instant gratification thing.
Exactly. The sermon said something like, following acceptable cultural practices at the expense of God's plan leads to unpredicted problems. That hits home when shortcuts look tempting because, well, maybe it feels like God's taken too long.
Oh, absolutely. We want the microwave meal when God's doing slow-cooked barbecue.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where Pastor Florin brought in God's harmony, this idea of God's intentional design for how things work best, for relationships, for life choices, for everything.
Like an inherent order.
Sort of, yeah. An order that leads to flourishing. And when we go against that harmony, like Jesus references the creation design in Mark 10, male and female, that specific intention we often create, well, a big mess.
Especially in relationships and family, maybe?
Often there, yeah, but it applies broadly. When we follow society's shortcuts instead of God's blueprint, we should probably expect things to get bumpy. Either natural consequences or maybe an intervention. Neither is usually fun. It's about that stubborn pursuit of God's way, even when it's harder.
Okay, so if our job isn't just trying to fix the culture, and it's not just sitting back waiting for God to zap us with a solution, what is our job?
The sermon boiled it down, didn't it? Our job is to understand our calling and to be obedient to it.
Right. And the calling.
Be his messengers, make apprentices of Jesus. That shifts everything.
It really does. So what does that mean, making apprentices?
Well, it's not just about head knowledge.
Right.
Not just believing facts. It's fundamentally about doing.
Okay.
Jesus invites us to a new path, a new trajectory, away from the mess, away from the shortcuts. He intervenes today, just like with Hagar, saying, be my apprentice, follow me.
Like learning a trade.
Exactly, like a carpenter and an apprentice. The apprentice learns by doing, alongside the master, practicing, messing up sometimes, getting guidance. It's practical, hands-on, learning by living it.
I like that. It makes following Jesus feel less abstract, more real. And the sermon gave actual steps for this, right? For pursuing God's harmony when maybe our life isn't quite lining up.
3 key things. First was prayer.
But not just like asking for stuff. It was about repentance, commitment, really deciding, okay, Jesus is Lord, saying yes to his way.
Right. Churning from the stuff that's out of harmony and choosing his path. Foundational.
Then second, action.
Yeah. Practical stuff. Removing possible triggers. So if something keeps tripping you up, you actively change your environment or habits.
Okay.
And telling a trusted confidant, that's huge. It's bringing someone else in. Accountability, support, not trying to do it alone.
It's like clearing the decks and making space for the new thing.
Exactly. Being proactive.
And the third one, connection, really felt like the core of the apprenticeship idea.
Totally. Engaging with a mature follower of Jesus. Being accountable to them for a set time, like 90 days, while you build new habits.
It's not just believing differently, it's doing things differently, with someone guiding you.
Like learning an instrument with a teacher. They show you, correct you, encourage you. Learning the way of Jesus from someone who's walking it too, just maybe a bit further down the road.
Spotting blind spots, celebrating wins.
Yeah. It is apprenticeship. Learning the craft of following Jesus by practicing it with guidance.
So wrapping this up, Jesus, as the intervener, he steps in, he offers a new path, a new calling.
Yeah, to be his apprentice.
Which means actively choosing God's harmony over those easy cultural shortcuts. And it's not just wishful thinking, it involves real steps. Prayer, action, connection, that stubborn pursuit.
Right. Which kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it, for you listening?
Yeah.
Where might you be taking a shortcut right now? Is there an area of your life that feels a bit out of alignment with God's harmony? Could be anything, relationship, job, habit. And if there is, what would just the very first step look like for you? That first step in the stubborn pursuit of God's harmony. Maybe it's that prayer of commitment. Maybe it's deciding on one trigger to remove. Or maybe it's reaching out to someone you trust, starting that connection.
Just the first practical step.
Just the first one. Starting that apprenticeship journey.
That's definitely something to chew on this week. Maybe talk it over with someone.
For sure.
Well, that was a good deep dive. Lots to think about.
Yeah, definitely.